welcome back to the Beardworks podcast for episode number 30. We are back. We're loving life. And Nick, how are you, man?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah, just getting back to uni first week, nothing crazy.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, you've had what, a week? You've had a week off now, or 2 weeks?
I had an intensive and then I had 2 weeks off and now I'm back proper
Uh,
semester, final year.
Good fun. I'm seeing some of the art you've been sending through. It's pretty some dark stuff, just to say.
Yeah, better than the furry hentai shit my classmates draw.
Hope none of them are listening to this.
Oh, mate, they deserve to hear it.
Anyways, so this week we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a deep dive into a certain kind of series that we both watched. Nick watched a while ago, and I finished it up last month, I'd say. But it's a show that I held dear to my heart now after finishing it, as well as like a series and like I don't know, you could say it's a genre. That we've loved for years, and it's part of our childhood coming up. And we've spoken about spoken about the live action movies and stuff like that, but this is a little bit different. So today's episode, we're going to be focusing on Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is the animated series that came out, I believe, a little while ago. In 2008 was when the film released, and then they've created the show after that. So
Yep.
but yeah, there are 7 seasons of it. So yeah, we'll just start off with what's the Clone Wars is about. So if anyone who hasn't seen it, which you should go watch it, you're about to be spoiled by a fair bit. The Clone Wars is the years between the Attack of the Clones, the second episode, and Revenge of the Sith, which is the third episode.
Yep.
So it fills the gap, and because it's quite a big jump. Then this is why I like the Clone Wars, because in Attack of the Clones, you meet the clones, of course, and it's just like a giant army, and then you skip to Revenge of the Sith, and you don't really hear there's no real stories about the clones, and then all of a sudden you see them, they're starting to kill the Jedi at the end of the film. So yeah, it's quite a big jump. But Nick, what are you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, in Revenge of the Sith, you only really see, and I'm not Anakin, Obi-Wan, he talks to Cody
Yeah.
for 2 seconds, and then 66 happens and it all kicks off. But you don't know any clones. You don't even barely
Yeah.
see them with their masks off.
Which this is why the Clone Wars is such a good little series, because it fills the gaps and the stories of, they're not just mindless and like people, the clones. Obviously, in some instances they are, but they learn to grow if they survive long enough, because clones are seen to throughout the series get killed off pretty quickly. They're just like fodder pretty much, but there are some really good characters throughout the Clone Wars. So yeah, we'll just start it off. The film that came out in 2008 was just a bit of an entry into it, and that's when we introduced to Ahsoka, which we didn't know in the movies was, you didn't even hear about her in the movies. The only time we've actually seen her now in live action is The Mandalorian. So
Yep.
Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan, which is kind of crazy considering that the Council, I think, they knew Anakin was a bit reckless and a bit different from a normal Jedi, and they just hand him a Padawan to sort of teach his ways. It's quite funny.
Yeah, it's a bit strange how he gets a Padawan in Clone Wars, because they won't give him the rank of master. They they kind of look at him as a bad boy, but then they give him this responsibility. So I don't know if
Yeah.
it was just early idea in the Clone Wars and they had to stick with it, or I don't know what. But I'm pretty glad it happened because Ahsoka turned out pretty wild.
Well, that's the thing. So the film starts off. It's just a show. There's a bit of a battle going on. Ahsoka rocks up saying that Yoda has sent her to become Anakin's Padawan, and that goes on. There's a bit of a fight, and they create, and it's just a film. It's not too bad. But the best part of the Clone Wars is the actual series. So a lot of people say that the start of the series of the Clone Wars is a bit childish. It's more aimed at younger people, and I'd say that'd be true. It is a very fun kind of show. There's not real there's consequences, but it's more just Jedi killing droids and stuff like that. There's no real major human deaths, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it definitely gets a lot darker as it goes on. It's like similar to how Harry Potter is, how the first few are like kids'
Yep.
movies, and then as the characters grow up, it gets a bit more brutal.
Well, that's the thing. I think from about, I don't want to say a season, but season 5, when that hits there, that's when they start getting a little bit darker. There are characters that die off, but season 5 is when you introduce Savage Press and Darth Maul again, which is obviously a major key point of the story at the time. So you do see characters getting like Jedi being killed by these guys, which is something we saw obviously in the Revenge of the Sith, but yeah, in a TV show like a cartoon kind of thing animated, it's a little bit different. So it's a little bit darker. What gets on from then.
Yeah, it's definitely when the malls come into it. It's
Yeah,
when the series takes a tonal shift, like because they're savage, man. They just are mincing everyone, cutting people down, not caring, like,
yeah.
and then it
It
just
really
kicks off.
it really builds because Safaja Press was just he was actually a good Dathomir character, like as in before he got the enhancement of like this like beefed up, jacked up, like mindless beast.
Yep.
And then he went off to find his brother because he was kind of cool because they built up the story of him being Ventress's sort of like apprentice or assassin, and then he infiltrates Dooku's lair to become his apprentice, and then she snaps him out of it mid in a fight, and then all of a sudden it's him and her versus Dooku. But then Savage Princess gets angry, just annihilates, but pushes them both over. It's just oh man, it's just a big party. But yeah, that was cool little fights. And then obviously after that he goes off to find Darth Maul. So
Yeah, Darth Maul's probably like one of the real big highlights for me in Clone Wars, just because I've always loved Darth Maul, and we never really had much content on him. There was a couple comics and shit, but like Clone Wars really makes people love Darth Maul, or for me at least.
yeah, so I think they arrive in about season 5, and that's when it really does get a bit darker and it really kicks off a bit. But there are some still great fight scenes throughout the Clone Wars because the thing is, it does focus on some episodes, especially in the early parts. It does focus on Obi-Wan and Anakin and like the main characters from the films. But then as it goes on, it starts to focus on the characters they've built up over the time of the Clone Wars. And by the time you get to season 7, it's some of the best cinematic Star Wars stuff you ever see, as well as some of the best character development is so it's just amazing.
Yeah, it was unreal seeing all the Jedi that you just see get cut down in about 2 seconds in Revenge of the Sith, actually getting to know all the Jedi on the council, like Plo Koon, Kiar-Mundi, Kit
Kit
Fisto,
Fisto,
yeah, all of
yeah,
them. They're
that's
wicked. And you don't know them if you never watch Clone Wars, and you miss out on all this wicked stuff. They've all got
yeah,
their own arcs. It's sick.
yeah, and that's like in one. I think it's in the first season, maybe when. So obviously throughout the thing, we're throughout the whole series, we're getting to know Ahsoka and what she stands for, and she is very much an Anakin clone kind of thing, as in she feeds off of her master in a way that she likes to defy orders like he does, because it's all about victory and stuff like that, and you sort of see that in an episode where she is in a starfighter with her like little unit, and she's flying through this battle, and a lot of them get picked off and die because of her rashness and recklessness, I should say.
Yep.
And so then she gets scolded for it, and you realize that it's not, you can't just get away with it. Um, and so with what you're talking about these story arcs is that Ahsoka has this massive story arc over the 7 seasons. I think is one season where she's not in it at all because of her situation, which we'll get onto soon. But yeah, the other characters, like there's an episode where Kit Fisto and his squad get lured into General Grievous's lair, um, and his whole clone units get taken out. And then at the very end, Kit Fisto takes him on with double lightsabers, and it looks so epic. He's just fighting off Grievous because Grievous in the movie was a bit lackluster because we didn't know where he came from. We sort of just understood that he was this robotic android kind of looking thing that had 4 arms and just wielded a lightsaber, which didn't mean much.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's sick how you even see, like, as you said, his lair is so wicked. That big castle, and
yeah.
how Obi-Wan and Anakin had been chasing him the whole series. Kind of makes you appreciate Revenge of the Sith more because they obviously have a relationship before we see him.
Well, that's the thing. Grievous was like this commander of the droid army that wasn't just a pushover. And, it showed, he did escape a lot of times, but he was a cunning commander, if you know what I mean. So, but yeah, there was some great episodes throughout. Like they had Plo Koon, some like focus episodes of him, and Plo Koon is such a cool Jedi. Like he literally, like in the comics, he has Force lightning.
Yeah, he's
Um,
one of my favorites, man.
and so, but you see, he has a connection with Ahsoka as well, and that's like it's just so cool to see these guys have all these relationships, and like connections with everyone. It's not just a simple Jedi are just like soulless people. What it seems like sometimes. Um, but yeah, so moving throughout, there are some great episodes, and we start to learn the names and the different kind of characters of the clone army, which is some of the best stuff throughout this series. Obviously, you have Captain Rex, who is
My favorite.
the captain of the 501st Legion, like which is Anakin's company, which is like his army.
For people that don't know his name, he's the clone that wears blue and white, and he's got like bleach blonde shaved head.
and he's got a stick helmet,
Yeah.
and he's got the little arm card because I think he's not because he sort of like wears half arc trooper armor
And
kind of
like,
thing.
yeah, dual wield like blaster pistols.
Yeah, Captain Rex is a really cool character, and he's very like he gets developed so well over the whole series, and the connection between him and Anakin and him and Ahsoka is such a thing that you like you hold on to. It's like wow, this is awesome. So you have Captain Rex, you have Cody, who you see bits and pieces of, but because I think he gets screen time in the movie, they don't show him off as much
Yep.
in the series because they want to focus on Anakin's company most of the time. Um, yeah, so there's just some great stories, and one of the big turning points of the whole war was the Umbara arc, which was one of the best story-driven, like Clone Wars, clone kind of stories throughout the whole series because that's like so the Umbara homeworld is like one of the most formidable foes I'd say in the series. Which there's like I think a 3 or 4 episode like little focus on this thing on this world, and it's just a really brutal planet where they lost like tens of thousands of soldiers on it because the battles were so harsh. Um, and it was really cool because that story showed that clones weren't just mindless soldiers; that they had feelings, and then that they didn't just throw their lives away. Because earlier on in the story, they're charging through this massive battle. It's like a joint attack between all these different companies, and Anakin's leading his. He gets called away back to Coruscant to work with his best mate Palpatine. Um,
Yeah. Well.
because that obviously slowly builds up over time, the relationship, and that's why you see it's not so much a shock when it happens in Revenge of the Sith then. But pretty much this Jedi master General Krell takes over, and you see that his battle tactics are just like just sacrifice the clones at all costs to win.
Yep.
And we've seen over the last so many seasons that Anakin is all about protecting his soldiers, and like he does do some rash stuff that costs people's lives, but it's ultimate victory at the end for him. But he also is compassionate towards his soldiers, including Rex. And so, and then there's also a bunch of other characters like what is Arc Trooper when he gets to this point, but Fives, a great clone character.
Yeah, what's his squad called again with fives? Because they get like, a bunch of episodes. Can't remember what his
Well,
squad's called.
they're like they're like the beginning of the Bad Batch, I guess. Like they're at the very beginning, as in that's what or was it Clone Force 99 or something? I can't remember what it is, but they're the is it him Fives? There's like heavy
Domino
a bunch
squad.
of yeah, that's it. Sorry, but like, so they're like the delinquents. They're not actually. They only just make it through boot camp, and then a bunch of them get picked off one by one. But then some of them become arc troopers, which is the best thing because it shows that over the story, if you survive a battle and you battle hard and you get better at what you're doing, you get promotion. And you see some of these characters over time that you see little bits and episodes as them as clone troopers. They become arc troopers, which is they're like the commandos kind of thing.
Yeah, it's real sad because you get there's like 3 or 4 episodes where you go through that squad's training, and then it
Yeah.
skips, and then you're like, oh yeah, this one fell in battle, this one, and you're like, oh, you don't even see it.
Yeah, well, there's the episode where a bunch of them get picked off, but then they show the episode of them going through training like the next season. So it's like, oh, these guys are heaps cool, but they got killed in the last season. It's a bit funny like that. But anyways, back to the Umbara arc. It has General Krell who just like really like throws the clones under the bus, like they're getting picked off one by one, and you can tell that he's not all good. And this is when it starts to pick up that everyone's starting to feel a shift in the force kind of thing because Krell can see something in the future and he starts to choose a side, and you think that he might be going off on his own, but the whole idea is he's trying to get the attention of Count Dooku because he's actually trying to lose the battle for the Republic on Umbara by at one stage because Rex goes against his orders and stuff like that, and then some shit happens and it's really full on. But the main thing is that eventually, after a few of them defy these orders, and also there's a firing squad they were meant to take out 2 soldiers from doing this mission that he didn't approve, and he puts them up for execution, and the squad shoots to the left of them, and they all survive because they think this is way too much for like disobeying orders. Um, and so Krell sends them out and says that their enemy are wearing clone trooper armor. Go out there and eliminate them. So he's told Rex and his team to go out there and start shooting. They go out there, they engage in battle with Obi-Wan's company, and like, well, they're wearing the same color armor and they're fighting, and then eventually Rex takes a helmet off of one of the soldiers they just killed, and it's a clone trooper. And so he's running out, taking his helmet off. Take your helmets off. We're all the same. It's me. And you realize that Krell had sent his side of the company to say that, hey, they're wearing the like General Kenobi's armor, take him out, and then he's told General Kenobi's company, hey, they're wearing my people's armor, take him out. So he sent them together to kill each other
Yeah, man.
just because he wants to prove himself or something like that.
I also like that. I don't know if it's the same arc. It's we know when the clone glitches and his Order 66 goes off early.
Yeah, that's like season 6.
Yeah, that's hectic because like they had the opportunity, the Jedi, to stop Order 66 then, but they didn't really believe it because the Camino dogs were like
Yeah.
talking shit and like tricking them and oh
So that's the thing. So obviously, these some of these story arcs where focus on the clone troopers, it builds up these characters that you're really attached to. So there's a character, yeah, like I said, Fives, and that's his main character, and he goes into this with his best mate. I forget he's the guy that did that who shot the Jedi. But point is, there's a massive battle going on, and one of the clone troopers starts glitching out, and he starts looking at the Jedi, and he's like looking back at the droids, and all of a sudden he just goes up behind one of the Jedi generals mid battle and just shoots her in the back.
oh yeah, and it's in the middle of a firefight as well.
Yeah, and then you see like Fives run up and spear tackle him, and say he goes, "What are you doing?" Like, and then all of a sudden he's glitching out. He keeps saying it, and then so if there's a massive like 2 or 3 episodes where Fives is doing this investigation, finds that there is a chip, and then he gets an operation on his and gets his chip taken out, and then it compares the chips, and one chip is like decayed and stuff like that, and the other, and his is intact, and so the one that decayed is the soldiers that he died after the chip got taken out because his mind was shattered, whereas Fives was okay. But because he had the chip taken out, they framed him to say like he was going crazy, and he tried to prove it. And so all of a sudden, is it Shakti, the Jedi Master? She's the one that's on Camino, and so she goes, "Oh no, we got evidence now. We'll take this back to Chancellor Palpatine and show him." And then so they all leave the room, and Fives is getting talking to by Chancellor Palpatine, and all of a sudden a fight breaks out, and Palpatine's like, he tried to kill me, and then so that all of a sudden, because obviously he's exposed the plan to Fives and said, hey, yeah, the chip's in there and this is the reason why, and no one's going to believe you because you're going crazy. And then he escapes, and there's a massive chase scene. You see Rex trying to convince Fives to stop, and he's got Anakin there as well. They've caught him in the ray shields, and he's just said, "You need to listen to me." Like, but he sounds crazy. He's just like, he goes, "There's a plan." He goes, "They're going to kill the Jedi. Why would I want to kill some of our the best men that we have in our company and stuff like that?" And it's just real brutal, like so hard to watch.
Because you find out in the Clone Wars that the clones don't want to do Order 66. When
Yeah,
when they get activated, they're thinking that they don't want to do it, but their body's just acting.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. In the Revenge of the Sith, we don't actually get to see that because they just do it.
Yeah,
But
but
that's why
yeah.
they build up the relationships over time and get to this point where they don't want to do that. Like, it's not like, oh, they're mindless beings that they just want to do it.
What's the Clone Wars go for? It's like 5 years, 6 years.
It's a long time because Anakin goes from like a teenager in the Clone Wars to the Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith. I think he's like 21, 22.
Yep.
But the thing is, that's another point, is that Ahsoka goes from like 14 to 16, I think. So that's bits and pieces. I'm not sure the actual age, the time gap is, but anyways, yeah, this was a great feel. That's the great storytelling, that they showed, and Dave Filoni was involved in this, the chosen one, and so they had some really good stuff in there about the clone troopers, and that's the downfall you see at the end of it. Like, we'll get to the season 7 shortly. That it's really hard to watch. You see the clone troopers that have all these backstories turn on the Jedi, and it's just like it's gut wrenching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's wicked how like Rex and his squad cut their own chips out. You see them don't kick off in 66, but then you find out in Rebels that they had to cut their own chips out. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We obviously in Rebels, I'm not to that part of Rebels, but obviously you catch up with Rex and I think it's Wolf and Gregor. I think it is. But yeah, we know what happens with Rex because his story is inside the Clone Wars. You see what happens with there, but we'll get to that shortly. But we'll go back to Ahsoka because Ahsoka is pretty much the main story from a certain point onwards. So back earlier in the series, Ahsoka was a character where people got really annoyed because she was quite childish and she did things without thinking about the consequences, and she never really got pulled up about it. Then there was a couple episodes where they turned her story around and made her accountable for her actions and punished her and stuff like that. And then her story became really good. Now she fights with a different kind of style. She fights ability like Starkiller with a lightsaber facing the other way.
Yep.
When she uses the one, But then later, there's like a bit of a time jump, and she looks a bit older. Her outfit's changed. Looks a bit more, little bit mature. And Anakin apparently had the idea to give her two lightsabers because the way her technique fights is that sometimes she can get caught off guard with only having one. So he's given her two, but not just two normal size lightsabers. He gave her a Shoto blade.
Yeah, it's like a samurai fighting style.
So it's like a bit shorter. But yeah, so Ahsoka's really cool because you see her grow and develop over time. Where before, like in the first season, she as a Padawan, she takes on General Grievous and like she goes to battle him, like she wants to fight him. And then there's a season in one of the episodes, she's protecting the younglings because they got attacked and Grievous is chasing them down, and she only engages when she has to. Like she keeps running and running and running until they get to safety, and then she holds him off for a little bit, and then she escapes as well. So you know that she's grown, that she doesn't go looking for a battle when she has got other things to protect. So that was really cool development story for her.
Yeah, Ahsoka is definitely the main focus of Clone Wars. Pretty well.
Yeah, and that's and this is one of the big turning points of the story. So, um, and this is where it happens. Like, so Anakin cares about Ahsoka a lot. Like, it's a funny thing because a lot of the other Jedi Masters, when they have their Padawans, they don't have the compassion and the feelings towards their Padawans like Anakin does, and that's because Anakin is a flawed Jedi, you know.
And he
But
had like a master that treated him like that, like Obi-Wan and him.
yeah, Obi-Wan was very by the books, and that's what. And then we've talked about this about the films. You know, if Qui-Gon had brought Anakin up as a Jedi, it wouldn't have happened. If you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like he wouldn't have become Darth Vader. So the point I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's a big deal that they gave Anakin a Padawan because it's someone he can feel for. Because obviously he lost his mother in Attack of the Clones. He lost some other people through his life that turned him to that point. You know, that he wasn't strong enough because the Jedi weren't training him. That's what he thought. Um, so to give him a Padawan that he can sort of carbon copy himself into, um, you know, it was a bit strange because, you know, we already knew how, you know, reckless he can be, and you give him someone that he cares about. In saying that, in the series, Anakin is a very strong leader. Like he's not like we see him in the third film, if you know what I mean. He's very sure about himself,
Yeah.
um, and he's a great commander, one of the best warriors of the Jedi Council. Excuse me. Um, so yeah, moving on, there are some episodes where Ahsoka learns and grows, and Anakin shows how much he cares about her. Like there are some scenes where she gets trapped and or she's missing, and he's just like constantly on the look for her. With when she's with another Padawan, which is this is where the story ends up anyway. This other Jedi Master, she's like, I'm ready to let go if I lose my Padawan. Whereas Anakin's like, I'm not abandoning her. Like I'm not giving up.
Oh yeah, that's when they get caved in on that.
Yeah.
She's got that her friend that ends up being Sith.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think she's really Sith, but she
Just a
just turns
prick.
it back on the yeah. So that's where it turns around. So there's a bombing at the Jedi Temple, and a few Jedi are killed, and also a bunch of clone and a bunch of civilian workers as well. And this because there's a lot of political stuff in the Clone Wars
Yeah.
series. Like they show the difference, like because that's what the trilogy is about. The prequels. It's about like democracy and going through the Senate and stuff like that, and that you have to win over that before you can actually win the war.
Yeah, the
Um,
Senate gets heaps of screen time in the Clone Wars. They got so
yeah,
much courtroom scenes.
yeah, and there's just there's a lot of things to it because there's a lot of great episodes. But we're just talking. But obviously, Star Wars, when I think about it, it's all about the Jedi and the
Yeah.
Sith. So that's why I like to focus on that. And that's why we are focusing on that. But there is a bombing, and they do the rounds and stuff like that. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and Ahsoka gets called to the wit. So this lady had actually set her husband up by feeding him some nanobots that react to something, and he exploded. So she, pretty much killed her own husband, and she wants to, and she's been arrested, and so she wants to speak to Ahsoka. Ahsoka goes in to talk to her. They're talking away, but for some reason the audio has been cut off on the cameras, and all of a sudden she gets starting to get force choked, and Ahsoka's standing there waving her hands trying to get her down. It looks like she's choking her.
Yeah. Oh, I do
So
remember
she,
that actually, yeah.
yeah, so she dies, and then Ahsoka's arrested for killing the only witness, and thinking then so all of a sudden Ahsoka has been put as the primary target because they think that she was the one that planned it, and she killed off the only person that was connected to it. So it's a real rash decision and a harsh decision by a lot of the main characters throughout the story to sort of throw her under the bus, and I think that's what is the ultimate the tipping point. So throughout this 3 or 4 story episode arc, Ahsoka is in prison. She escapes, but then her lightsabers are found against a bunch of dead troops, clone troopers, and she's just like walking around going, "What's happening? What's going on?" And she thinks that Anakin is helping her escape, but that's not the case. someone else is setting her up. So it looks like she forced her way out and killed a bunch of clones with these lights with a lightsaber, and then now she's on the run.
Yeah, and that's. I think they kind of had to put this story in there just to get her out of the picture because she's not in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it's such a, and because this thing, like, she's had such a great story, and eventually she gets captured again, but she goes on a massive she goes on like a little adventure with Ventress, because Ventress, obviously we know the story about Ventress, how she gets betrayed by Dooku, and that's why she used Savage Press to attack him, but then she just goes off and becomes a bounty hunter, which is a cool story.
Yeah.
um and so her and Ventress go off and have their little story, and then they break off at the last second. Ahsoka gets attacked by someone who she thinks is Ventress, but that's not the case. Anakin does a little bit of research. He does a bit of digging, becomes like a bit of a detective, and he's driven like crazy. Like, he believes that Ahsoka is innocent and is, really going hard to find the person who's behind this. And you see that the council gave up on Ahsoka. They just thought, they're just like, it's a military matter now. We don't have a say in this.
And that's why she hates him now. Well, not hates him, but just like not a fan of
Yeah.
him.
And so eventually you find out that who the real culprit is, which is it Barris? No, that's the master. But anyways, there's the Padawan that she befriended in the earlier seasons.
Varys.
Um, Varys, that's it. She had thought that the Jedi had lost their way, which is true if you think about it in the whole story. The Jedi were meant to be peacekeepers and protectors of the universe, not generals in an army and
Soldiers, yeah.
soldiers. So she thinks that they've seen so many home worlds get destroyed and like from war torn stuff, and the Jedi just leave after. So she's just like, we've lost our way. We're more about all the stuff with the Senate and all that kind of stuff. So that's not who we are. We're meant to be these protectors and stuff like that. And so yeah, there's a little bit of a fight scene between her and Anakin, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, she holds her own for a little bit.
Yeah, but then Anakin just goes, I'm a beast, and just like slams up against a tree using the Force.
In front of all the kids.
Yeah. Which is, yeah. So eventually he brings her forward to the hearing as Ahsoka's about to be like handed down like the death penalty pretty much, and she admits to it all. And then obviously Ahsoka's like completely cut up about it, and she knew that the Jedi probably haven't been the best either. And then so when she goes back and the Jedi Council because we may have been blind at the time, but we've seen that this was your test to become a Jedi Knight. And he goes, we now grant you the rank of Jedi Knight.
And
And
she
then
denies it.
yeah, Anakin's like, will you come back? And she's just like, I'm sorry, Master. And like, you see, she's lost faith in the council for, not betraying her, but just not believing her side of the story. Of course, she didn't help herself.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a cool story arc for Ahsoka. And that's what builds up, because she goes missing for the next season, and that's when the Fives things happens with the chip, and then he gets murdered and all this, and then you see that the plan started building up. Yoda goes on this adventure like on his own and sees what happened. Like, he can see the Sith and stuff like that, and goes to Darth Bane, he's like lair, and he can feel the dark side of the Force, and
Yeah.
it's just a really cool little story. And you see that Yoda's sees something happening, but he goes, if we stick together, we can defeat the Sith no matter what. And yeah, so pretty much that gets us to season 7, which is where
The best shit happens.
the best stuff happens. And just a little bit of prior to season 7, there is a fight scene with Darth Maul and Savage Press against Darth Sidious, because you see Darth Sidious is like, he's getting too powerful, he's getting too much power, I need to knock him down a few pegs.
Yeah.
And so he kills his Savage Press, and then you don't see Darth Maul for a full season. Pretty much he goes missing. But then he pops up in season 7. Now, season 7 is some of the best Star Wars content you will ever see.
Yeah, it's hectic. The whole Mandalore shit, and yeah, just the Ahsoka being base unit, and
Yeah, and so this season 7 kicks off introducing us to the Bad Batch, which have their own show coming out this year on May the 4th. So the Bad Batch are a really cool bunch of characters, and so to have them around and to introduce them is really cool, because they're literally like a wrecking ball kind of squad.
yeah, they're like clones that just got messed up in the creation process, and they've all got something wrong with them.
Yeah. So what happens after those few episodes is that they actually bring Ahsoka back, and this is her living in like the underworld or the underbelly, pretty much, of Coruscant. So it's kind of cool to see how she's been going. It's been a little while since we last saw her. She befriends these two sisters. They do a few missions together. Those episodes aren't really important.
Nah.
It's just to introduce Ahsoka back into the story. But the main thing around the last few seasons was Mandalore. So people that have seen the Mandalorian have heard about the great purge of Mandalore and stuff like that. Um, but the Mandalorians obviously were great warriors that fought that could stand up to Jedi pretty much. You
Because
know?
all this stuff in all the Clone Wars and shit is all before the Purge. Because
Yeah,
wasn't Vader and like the Empire part of the Purge? That's what kicked it
yeah,
off. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so Mandalore is like they were the greatest enemy of the Jedi in like centuries gone. And then there's the whole story about Obi-Wan and his relationship with Duchess Satine,
Pretty well
where
his wife almost.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. And so Satine was like this leader for the Mandalorians, of Mandalore to try and say we're a peaceful home world now. We're not trying to start battle. And then that's the whole thing about Death Watch. Death Watch is such a cool story.
We finally saw them live in Mando.
Yeah,
Or
and so
part of it.
and so Death Watch were like a splinter cell of Mandalore that wanted to bring back the original,
They're like
Mandalorian ways.
Mandalorian purists. They like want to live the old fashioned way, the warrior life. They don't
Yeah,
want to be
exactly.
like peacekeeping and
And that
they like the fight.
introduced us to the dark saber, which we obviously went on to see in the Rebels and in the Mandalorian. And so there's some really cool stuff. Obviously, eventually, Maul works his way into Death Watch and becomes the leader of them after he kills Pre Vizsla, who
Yep.
was like a Mandalorian like senator, but then turned into like a warrior leader with the dark saber. And so and you see all these different like, little characters, and there's Bo-Katan who you see throughout Rebels and also in the Mandalorian now. So there's really cool characters that they span over like the series and the shows, which is really cool. But pretty much in one of the seasons, Obi-Wan gets drawn out and has to infiltrate Mandalore, even though that Mandalore is a neutral planet. If it gets brought into the war, it's a real big thing, so they just stay away from it at all costs. So it's more like a political kind of place. And Darth Maul kills Duchess Satine, like right in front of Obi-Wan,
Yep.
which is the woman he spent a long time when he was younger with Qui-Gon Jinn protecting, and you could tell that they had a relationship, and he fell in love with her and stuff like that, which is against the order, which is why he never said anything. Um, but even saying that in the moment that she was dying, he told her that he would have left the order if she asked, which is such a massive thing considering that he was so strict on Anakin.
That's probably one of the reasons why it was such an easy choice for him to go into exile on Tatooine. Well, his
Yeah.
love was dead. Jedi Order's gone. Might as well just go sit in the desert.
Yeah, and the thing is, and that was really cool. Like, obviously, we see that happen, and there's one scene in season 7 when Anakin's talking to Padme while Rex is watching, watching the door. So Rex knows what's happening between the two of them, and then like you see Anakin walking off, and Obi-Wan goes, "I hope you said hello to Padme for me," and he's like looks back like awkwardly. So obviously Anakin knows. I mean, Obi-Wan's always known.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so there's this story behind Mandalore and stuff like that, and Obi-Wan and all that kind of stuff. But the point is that eventually Darth Maul comes back, and is building his crime syndicate, which is the Crimson Dawn, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the
Rogue
dude we
One.
see
Oh, no,
in
wrong one.
Rogue
Second.
One and
No.
the
Solo.
Solo, yeah. Um, and that's the necklace he's got on in Solo when you see in that gold hoop thing. That's Crimson Dawn logo.
Yeah, and so pretty much Darth Maul's building this massive crime syndicate, and then he does take over Death Watch, and so he's in control of all these people, and so he's planning something on Mandalore, and obviously with Duchess Satine gone and everything else going on around the world, around the galaxy of the wars, they've sort of like they're not focusing on Mandalore at the moment, and so once Bo-Katan has her little splinter cell from Death Watch, they were like on Pre Vizsla's side when he was leader of the Death Watch, but when he got killed off, she ran off with a bunch of soldiers, and they've created their own little splinter cell. And so she approaches Ahsoka, saying, "Can you help us take down Darth Maul?" And so this is when it kicks off. So all of a sudden, we've seen these, Bad Batch episodes, Ahsoka episodes, and then we get to this, like the animation just goes up another level, and it's the fight just before Revenge of the Sith, pretty much. So it has Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting on this bridge. Anakin doing his like boss move where he just like an absolute alpha standing on the bridge on his own, draws the droid out, cuts it in half. The 501st come flying over the bridge with their jetpacks on, and just wiping them all out. It's just a massive scene. All of a sudden, he gets a call from his ship above in the stars and says there's been a message come out from Fulcrum, and we know that Fulcrum is from Rebels because Clone Wars, the final season came out after Rebels finished,
Yep.
and so we know that Fulcrum in Rebels was Ahsoka. and also it had something to do with Sol Guerrero as well. And
Book it,
so,
book it.
um, and pretty much, yeah. So all of a sudden, like, oh, Sol Guerrero might need help. Let's go up and take the message. And all of a sudden, you find out it's Ahsoka, and you see Anakin's like relieved. He's like, oh my gosh, she's here, and all that kind of stuff. And so they board the ship, and there's this really interesting meeting because you know that this is just before the Revenge of the Sith, like literally like hours before Revenge of the Sith. So you see Anakin like he's hopeful, he's happy to see Ahsoka, and Ahsoka just straight away blows him off by saying, "We can talk about this later. Like we got bigger things to talk about." And so Ahsoka goes and talks to the council, talks to everyone, saying, "We know Darth Maul's here. Will you help us?" And pretty much they're not sure what they can do because they know that if Mandalore is like a neutral planet, so they can't just start a war on there that they didn't want, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, dude,
Um,
for sure, man. That last season is just a roller coaster. There's just that much throwbacks and connections. It's unreal.
and so pretty much from then on, they agree that they have to take down Darth Maul or bring him in alive at least. And so Ahsoka, and there's this really good scene where Anakin and Ahsoka are walking through the decks of the hull, of the ship, and like all the soldiers like saluting her, and she's like, "Why are they saluting me for? I'm not part of the Grand Republic anymore. I'm not their general." And it's like they don't care. Like you're their leader. Like they look up to you,
And then
and you're like
there's that real heartwarming moment where they all paint Ahsoka's like markings on their
colors,
helmets.
yeah.
That's unreal, man. I want one of
It's
those. You can buy it. There's a custom dude that makes 501st helmets. You can get the Ahsoka one. It looks
that
so
was
sick.
it was such a heartwarming feel. Like when he walks out and you see them all line up, and Rex is standing there. Like he goes, "It's a bit of a quick job," but but they know what it symbolizes, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing."
And then
And then
she gets her
obviously,
sabers back.
yeah, and so pretty much like it all. So it's just that they're sort of throwing out what they want to do, and like obviously they want to talk about getting Anakin and Obi-Wan down there to help fight the battle, but yeah, it sort of shows that they can't really do that due to the fact of General Grievous has attacked the Coruscant and kidnapped Palpatine. Well, they can't find him pretty much, and so they've come to the conclusion that Anakin has to make the decision, and he has to go back to Coruscant with Obi-Wan to find and save Palpatine, which is the start of Revenge of the Sith. So this is like literally an hour before, and it shows that the only thing they can do is because Ahsoka's not part of the army; she's just a civilian, going along with them, advisor kind of thing. That she can't she can't command the army, but legally. So then they make Captain Rex Commander Rex, which is so cool. Um, and yeah, but obviously, Ahsoka is still going to be the leader, but they just say Rex is the commander. He can take off, like he can split the 501st in half, and he can take them with him. And so that's a cool scene when you see, so yeah, obviously Ahsoka gets her lightsabers, and then Anakin's like, oh, they've got a bit of, they're probably better, and then she ignites them and they're blue, and she's like giggles like, okay, because like her last ones are green, obviously. And then you see that look when she says like, "Good luck, Anakin." He goes, and then he just turns around and smiles. He goes, "I'll be okay." And that's the last time they see each other before
Ever.
he turns, which is such a hard feeling to like. I don't
Because we
know.
know it's coming.
Yeah, and you just know like, oh, this sucks so much because like it's so hard to watch.
And one of the best scenes in the entire series is when she's standing on the bridge of one of the command ships. It's like just after that, and she hears Revenge of the Sith in her head. She hears
Yeah,
like
him
Anakin
killing
saying,
Mace
"What have
Windu.
I done?" Getting
Yeah,
called Darth Vader and the music,
yeah.
and you just know.
But that's the thing. Like prior to that, there's some great shots. Like you see, so the Siege of Mandalore is absolutely amazing. You see, it has the music kicking off, has Ahsoka like because they're saying like, oh, we didn't bring you a jetpack, and so she's staying on the ship as they're flying down, they're getting picked off in the air. All of a sudden, she starts ship jumping and like taking out all these Mandalorian soldiers, like Death Watch. Such a cool fight scenes, like as she hits the ground, and it's like such an epic entrance. The ship blows up behind her after she saves a troop from his like one of the pilots. Um, but yeah, then it just kicks off like they're chasing Darth Maul. A bunch of people get killed. Jesse gets captured, who's like one of the ARC troopers that gets his story told over a certain amount of time. And you see Darth Maul sort of reads his mind and stuff like that. Eventually, it comes to a point where Ahsoka and the 501st and the true Mandalorians, what you could call them, have won pretty much Mandalore at this stage. And Darth Maul was sitting in the throne room waiting for Ahsoka to rock up.
And then
And
they have the like one of the sickest stills.
one of the best fight scenes and duels in Star Wars history kicks off because it's all captured in mocap.
Yeah,
And my gosh, it is such a glorious battle because they bring back Ray Park, who plays Darth Maul in episode 1. They bring him back and he gets in the motion capture. I forget the lady's name who takes on Ahsoka's role, but man, that is such a good fight scene. And this is Ahsoka Tano, like she's like literally 17 or 8, so 17 years old,
Fighting
and
Darth Maul, one of the sickest Sith kind of
yeah.
Force users.
And so we see, so she eventually wins the battle, and all you see is the very end, like as in they win the entire planet, and she defeats Darth Maul because Darth Maul is his own worst enemy most of the time when he fights. And she catches him with the Force, and they come up to capture him, and he's just yelling out, "We're all gonna burn! We're all gonna burn!" And this gets like zapped to go to sleep, and you're like, "That's pretty dark."
Yeah, and then you get that sick sequence where it's Ahsoka, Rex, and Darth Maul trying to escape
Yeah, because
after
obviously,
66 has gone off.
because that's the thing. It kicks off like the next few episodes, and you find that Obi-Wan's talking to Ahsoka, saying, "Oh, Anakin's killed Dooku," and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a full-on thing." And that's the thing. Darth Maul says to Ahsoka, he's
Anakin's the key.
yeah, Anakin is the new apprentice," and she goes, "No, your vision is flawed," because he raises his hand out and says, puts his hand out and says, "Join me, and we can take down Darth Sidious together." Now, that's just a saying. I don't think they could actually take down Darth Sidious together because I think Darth Maul is like he's got half the power he used to have.
And
Um,
he's too emotional. He gets reckless.
yeah, and so so then once he says that, "Oh, Anakin's the key, the Skywalker's the key," I started this whole battle, so then I thought he'd be drawn in, I could kill him myself, so we could destroy, I could stop Sidious's plan, or just like drive a stake into his heart. And so that's when Ahsoka goes, "No, your vision is flawed," which we obviously know is not, because eventually he does turn, and that's what happens after they're leaving. Darth Maul's all chained up and stuff like that. Ahsoka's on the bridge and with Rex, and Rex goes, "Oh, there's a call coming from Palpatine, or Chancellor Palpatine. It's probably just saying that we've defeated Grievous, we've won the battle."
And then you hear it in the background, don't you? 66.
Yeah. So she's obviously sensing with the Force. You hear Anakin, defeat, like killing Mace Windu well, not killing him, but chopping his hand off and saying, "What have I done?" And pretty much she goes, "Oh, this is wrong." She goes back and she opens up the thing, and all you see is like the hologram of Palpatine saying, "Execute Order 66." And he goes, "No worries." Turns around, and then Ahsoka's like to Rex, "Hey, I've sensed something's gone wrong. There's something going wrong with Anakin." And then he goes, turns around, he goes, "This is for, put your hands," or something like that. He just aims the guns at her and says, um, you've betrayed the Republic and all this kind of stuff. And then, yeah, pretty much she goes, "What are you doing, Rex?" And he goes, "Fine fine fives," and then starts shooting. Like, so he's holding back as best he can. And then he starts firing. All the clone troopers start firing to Ahsoka. She's like just jumping, dodging, deflecting blaster bullets. And then she eventually gets Rex, knocks him over, and says, "What's going on, Rex?" And like trying to talk to him while she got the doors closed. And all of a sudden, Jesse comes in with his unit and starts shooting at her. And there's a cool scene where she's on top of the hollow map, like deflecting all of them and aiming the bullets up, and pretty much shoots a hole in the roof to escape. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's obviously what moves on to the point of her eventually tricking Rex, capturing him, and having the chip removed after watching the hologram or the file of fives of what happened to him.
Yeah. And then Rex must have done that to his best mates because he has the couple with him in Rebels.
Yeah, which I don't know, we don't really find that story. It must be somewhere in a comic or something like that, how that got to that point. But point is that, Rex wakes up and fires and shoots one of the troopers back, and then you find out that he's on her side, and so they try to escape. There's massive like scenes of them fighting a bunch of clone troopers, and then they finally get to the ship hall where they can escape, and you see Jesse standing out there with the whole company saying, "Come out," and then Rex, pretends that he's captured Ahsoka, and he goes, "She's not actually a Jedi anymore. Like, she's not a part of the Order." She goes, "She's just a civilian." And then and Jesse has time to think, and for a second, and he goes, "Nah." He goes, "So your commander, sorry, your rank has been taken back. You're not commander anymore. You're just a captain." And then you see like Rex turns around and goes, "I never liked much being commander anyway." And then they start shooting, and they're not killing them. They're knocking them out. That's the whole thing. Ahsoka says that she doesn't want to kill them. She
No,
wants
because
to,
they're friends.
yeah. So this is the hardest point. Is that so? Then you see all this stuff happening, and then one of the coolest scenes I found was like, so they're on the back foot, like they're getting absolutely like it's attacked from everywhere, and Darth Maul makes it to the ship and is starting to take off, and there's a point where Ahsoka is literally using the Force to stop him from flying away. He's like full speed trying to take off, and she's using the Force while Rex is like holding off the whole battalion on his own, and that just shows you how powerful Ahsoka is.
Yeah. I
Like,
hope in the Ahsoka show we see old Rex.
yeah,
That'd be sick. I wonder how many people that don't watch Clone Wars have watched Mandalorian, seen Boba Fett, and then be like, "What is Rex Boba Fett?"
yeah.
That'd be so
But
fun.
But yeah, so I mean, there's just so much to unpack, and I know I've just shown bits and pieces of the whole story and explained it all and stuff like that. But I want to draw it back to say that Ahsoka is such a great character. Like I think she's one of the best Star Wars characters. Oh, and she's only been in the Clone Wars, obviously now in the Mandalorian as well, and her
Yep,
own show. But like, I'd love to see a young Ahsoka. Like if they did a Clone Wars like movie, like a one, like I said, doing a 501st film, you know. Um,
that would be wild.
but I just want to ask you a few questions before we wrap it up, because so obviously I loved the Clone Wars and you did too, and the season 7 was some of the best Star Wars cinematic stuff you ever see. But what would your thoughts be like? So say if Anakin did go to Mandalore, what do you think the outcome would have been? Like
I don't.
because he would have defeated Maul, like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he would have defeated Maul, and then I reckon he would have went to Coruscant with Ahsoka, and he would have had to fight Ahsoka.
You reckon?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't reckon it would have ended badly still,
Yeah, it's a tough one
because
because I think
Ahsoka would have never turned with him, never.
no, exactly. But the thing is, I feel like people. I think that I'm not sure if George Lucas or Dave Filoni said that no, even like the connection with Ahsoka, Anakin still would have turned. It wasn't like because he turned to save Padme, and so it's a kind of funny feeling. I don't know. It's a really tough one to think about it. But Ahsoka, like you see the connection between Ahsoka and Anakin, and it's like a whole different level of like you know I don't want to say love between the two of them, but you can tell that she loves her master,
Yeah,
and
it would have
so
ended with Anakin wanting to like having to fight her, or Sidious choking her out, or
yeah.
it would have been a lot more damaging to Ahsoka to go, or for Anakin to go with her. I reckon because it was a good like fight and conclusion. She had a safe exit in the end with Rex.
Well, that's the thing. Like at the very end, it shows the crash ship, and it shows like Jesse's helmet on the stake with a bunch of other clone troopers' helmets, and it shows her leaving a lightsaber behind, and then it shows some time has passed. It's snowing on that planet, and all of a sudden the Empire rolls up, and it's Darth Vader or Anakin as Darth Vader, and he finds one of the lightsabers, and you just see that it's not just a clear cut thing for him, even though they do rock up and see each other in Rebels. He's lost someone that he cared about, not just like the entire Jedi Order, but Ahsoka.
Do you reckon in the Ahsoka show or the Obi-Wan show we're going to see Ahsoka Vader shit? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
It's a bit
Maybe
of a tough
not,
one.
because Rebels is the first time they see each other again, I reckon.
Yeah, I don't know. There might be some flashbacks. Yeah, I don't know. But either way, if you guys that are listening, I know it's been a massive like just tearing apart the Clone Wars and why we've enjoyed it so much. But the one reason I say that Star Wars gives you so much hope, and you see like in Return of the Jedi, that Luke did never give up on his father, and that he always turned around. So the thing is like, there's always hope in life, no matter what, and and it happens, and you see it throughout the Clone Wars. You see like they sort of like start to win the battle of between the light and the dark, and then it gets drawn back the other way, and the last season is really just focusing on Revenge of the Sith, because you can watch a supercut. I know people have created it where you've got Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars, the final season, like as in those episodes, like entwined together.
That would be wild,
Um,
man.
so yeah, it shows like because at the very end of it, all hope is lost pretty much. We know that in Revenge, and so obviously Revenge of the Sith's happening. Ahsoka has gone into exile pretty much, and yeah, obviously, and then all of a sudden, it leads into Rebels, but then Rebels leads into like a New Hope. So, and that's the whole point is like, a
Yeah,
New Hope has arrived.
the two saddest endings for any movie, or like not sad, the like shocking endings, would have to be Revenge of the Sith and Infinity War. They've both got the same vibe at the end. Just
Yeah,
doom and gloom, all hope's gone. That's it.
exactly, and that's why that's when the comeback has to mean. That's why the comeback means so much more. Like especially in Endgame, they're literally been beaten down. There's nothing left, and they come back and they unite at the very end to defeat Thanos. And in Return of the Jedi, it's only literally one man, but he brings back his father, Anakin, who was the one, arguably like, the greatest Jedi that ever lived, before he had his accident. um, you know, it just shows you that you have to build up that all that expedition, like all that stuff beforehand to get to that point, so to make the payoff so much better. And I think the Clone Wars 100% makes Revenge of the Sith a 10 times better film.
Yeah, because I've watched Revenge, like, because I've been a bit quiet this episode because I can't remember as much because you've watched it a lot more recently than me. But I watched Revenge of the Sith, probably a month ago, and it was so much more hype after watching or knowing the entire Clone Wars story.
Yeah,
So much better.
because obviously we don't know about Ahsoka in the Clone Wars but that's the thing. It shows you why, because there's so much going on through Anakin's head. He doesn't have to mention it. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I just wish we
overall,
saw Ahsoka live more.
yeah, a young Ahsoka would be so cool. And so, like, to round it up, the Clone Wars is some of the best Star Wars stuff out there. You need to, who haven't seen it, go watch. Obviously, we've spoiled a lot for you, but if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is a bit of a, like, the first few seasons can drag on a little bit, and there's some stuff that's a bit boring, but there's some really good fight scenes. Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul and Savage Press, like dual lightsabers, is pretty bloody awesome. This shows you how strong Obi-Wan is. And yeah, just overall, just a really good series, and I'm so thankful that I was able to watch it and that it's out there for people to watch.
Mate, you wait to the end of Rebels, man. The Force shit that happens is just, it's mental. Real mental. And it's canon as well. You're watching it and you'll be like, how have we not seen this before?
Yeah, keen as to finish off Rebels now too. So, anyways, it's a 50-minute episode today at the moment. So, obviously, we're just very passionate about Star Wars, and I've loved it. So, I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, any other Star Wars fans out there, please go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. It's definitely worth watching. It's not just a kids show; it's actually like some proper Star Wars content, especially season 7.
Yeah, just push through the intro of it.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that wraps up today's episode. We will be talking about WandaVision again next week after Friday's episode, and we'll have something else to talk about, I'm guessing. We're just not sure yet. So,
No, it's always something.
there's always something. There's always new news out anyway. So, anyways, yeah, guys, thanks for listening. Go follow us on all our socials, like we always say, Instagram, and go check us out on YouTube if you've got some time. We've got some gameplay sometimes as well. So, yeah, Nick, any last words?
Nah, man, deuces.
All right, take care, guys.